So what if I told you, you don't have to sit alone in grief anymore? This is Natasha Smith, and you are listening to the Can You Just Sit With Me podcast. So today I'm sitting with Aubrey Sampson. She is the author of several books on grief, lament, and hope, including The Louder Song, Known, and a brand new best-selling kids book on hard things, heavy emotions, and Jesus' love, Big Feelings Days. Y'all, I truly love everything Aubrey is doing right now to bring hope and healing to the loss and grief space. She is a beautiful soul inside and out, and I can't wait for you to hear what she has to say and the great resources that she has that you can plug into. So of course, it'll all be listed in the show notes, but for now, come and sit with us and join the conversation. So I'm so excited to be sitting with you, Aubrey. I want to just go ahead and jump right in and ask you a question. Can you tell us about a time when you wanted to ask someone, can you just sit with me?
Oh, I love that question. And first of all, thank you for having me. It's seriously an honor to get to be here with you today. I love your ministry. I love your writing. I love the space you're in. And so thanks for letting me be a part of your little community today.
Oh, thank you.
Can I take 2 times? I'll try to be short with them
Yeah,
both.
yes, please.
Okay. I'll say the most recent one, and then I'll say the one that we'll probably end up talking about a little bit more. But in January, so you and I are having this conversation mid-April. So about 4 months ago, I walked into a radio studio where I worked for about 3 years. I co-hosted a teach and talk radio show in Chicago, and I got totally unexpectedly laid off. And yeah, it was shock. I think you were actually on my show one time, Natasha. It was not, I mean, they said, not cause, not performance, budget cuts all around because of the world being 2024. And unfortunately, I was part of that workforce restructuring. So, a lot of my ego has been bruised. But here's what I'll tell you. And my husband and I have actually talked about this a little bit, so I feel like it's safe to share. He went into fix it mode. What's the plan? How are we going? What we're doing? What are like a whiteboard? I brainstorming ideas, and I wanted to say, "Can you just sit with me?" Like I'm crying, I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm all of it. Now, God has showed up in tremendous ways, and it's actually so good that I'm not in that situation anymore. But in that moment. And then I would say the other one is a little over a year ago, my very best friend, Jen, died of breast cancer. And we have been, my best friend for 20 years, talked every day, ride or die, partner in ministry, all of those things. And we'd been really close. I mean, our whole relationship, but especially over the past 2 years as she was fighting breast cancer. And I would say both while she was on hospice and then the year that followed, I wanted to say that to everybody.
Yeah.
Just sit with me. That's all. And I didn't want everyone to sit with me, but the people that I wanted to sit with me, that's what I wanted to say with them. Mm-hmm. Let me just be sad and just be with me while I'm sad.
Wow. Those are both heavy and hard.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing those. Absolutely. Can you just sit with me?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's such a good question. I love that you name it because it's such a good question.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, let's kind of jump into from there, go into your story.
Yep.
And tell us, I first want to say, because we're going to be talking about your latest work, but you have some works, like you've got some more works. And so I just started, and I say just started like in the last couple of weeks, listening to A Louder Song.
Oh, you did? Oh,
yes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. Anyways, I'm enjoying it so much. I have it on audio, so it's so cool that I get to hear your voice too.
Thank you for reading that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so good. But anyways, okay. So tell us your story, because a lot of your story is actually in that book. It's in that book. So, but people who are not familiar, I just want them to hear from you today. And so tell us your story, and then how it kind of informs the work that you do, and then your your newest book.
The kids book. I love the
Yes.
kids book. Okay.
Big Feelings Days.
Okay, so I'll try to make the arc not too long, Natasha. Because
Okay.
like you said, I've written books about
Yes.
this. So.
Yes.
But essentially this in 2015, my husband Kevin and I, who I said before about him, he's an amazing husband. So I want to be very clear to honor him as well. But we 2015 we planted a church, little multi-ethnic community in West Chicago that we love deeply called Renewal Church. And we had been, dreaming for years, praying for years, but really specifically that, 2014 to 2015, we've got our core team and we're laying the groundwork and we're praying through the neighborhood and like doing all the things you do when you start a church. And the week that we were launching our first service, that very same week, a few things happened. Launching our first service, dreams coming true. My first book, a book called Overcomer, was coming out same week. So Kevin and I are celebrating like, man, these dreams that God has called us to, they're coming to fruition. And, just as life goes, Natasha, I know you know this well. I woke up one morning and just suddenly couldn't walk. And I could move my legs. It wasn't that I lost function of my legs. I just couldn't put any pressure on them. And so Kevin was, like carrying me around the house. I was scooting myself on my butt because I didn't realize it at the time, but my joints were no longer working. And I was a runner. And so I just thought, well, I've overblown my running capacity. I need to rest. I'm like literally on the couch, rest, ice, compression, elevation. And a friend came over and she was like, you need to go to the hospital. This isn't running. Anyway, long story short, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that impacts my joints. Now, again, it's been almost 10 years and the Lord has been good to me. Like I am doing so much better. But it was a rough patch as we're launching the church, as I'm launching my first book. And then in the middle of all of that, two other significant things happened. Our youngest son, we found out had to have spinal cord surgery. Something was up with his spine. So he spent a week at Lurie Children's Hospital, downtown Chicago, and then had a year of physical and occupational therapy. This is happening while I'm trying to figure out my own body and my own health. And then I lost my cousin Cameron. He was someone I was very, very close to. I write about him in the Louder Song, like a brother to me growing up. He was snowshoe hiking in Crater Lake National Park, Oregon, stepped out onto a snow cornice and just literally plummeted to his death. He actually sent a picture to me of Crater Lake. I have it still on my phone. And then that was the last we ever heard from him. And it's been, park rangers still haven't found his body and we're coming up on the 10th anniversary now. So, Natasha, it was this season, I'd been a Christian at that point for like 3 decades, but it was the first, and I know Christians suffer. I know people suffer around the globe. Like I know everyone suffers. I know this. And yet it was the first time it was like, I was faced with a hell that I did not know how to handle because all of it happened at once. And I was like, God, I thought you were supposed to be with me. I thought you were supposed to protect me for these things. And all these truths about we rise above and we're more than conquerors. I just wasn't experiencing it. My faith just kind of fell to the ground. And it was a deep, deep season of grief that turned into Lament, which is a lot of what I write about. And God met me there. And I don't even know how else to say it, except that at my lowest pit, God showed up, healing came, his presence came. And part of that was me learning to be okay with like, God, can you just sit with me? And then of course, I would say the latest pain just has been processing my best friend, Jen, which is a whole new can of worms to open. So that's part of my story. Just a lot. We've all been through a lot. So I don't think lots of people have been through worse than I have, and we know not to compare grief or suffering. But that was kind of a pinnacle moment for me of like, am I going to stay faithful to God or am I going to walk away? Because I just was like, have I been praying to the ceiling fan? Like, is God, are you even real?
Yeah.
And as God does, he met me there.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So much, so much. And I love how you brought up, we don't compare
Yeah,
because really, the losses that we go through are the worst loss. You know what I
that's it.
mean? The loss that you go through is your worst loss. And
That's
so
it.
it's just it's just all hard.
It's just all hard. It's all
Yes.
hard.
So, oh my goodness. Yeah. So, I love that. I mean, it was the perfect segue to say, I truly believe that what you've been through, I mean, the
Mm,
losses that you've experienced and it shows through, it comes
yeah,
through your work because it's a
yeah,
lived grief. It's not
yeah,
something that someone just told you a story about, but you've lived it.
yeah.
And so just kind of talk to us and tell us about the work that you're doing because
Hmm.
you're doing some amazing things. I keep
You're so
seeing it
thank you.
in your latest work. Yes.
Yeah, part of it is just I'm a writer, and so sometimes I feel like I pray as I type.
Mm,
And so part of I just think my own healing process and grief, and you probably are like this too, is that process of writing. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. It's just a way to express what's happening. It's a way to understand what's happening. It's a way to unpack healing. It's a way to unpack the pain. And so often I'll write for myself, but then ultimately I feel like there's a message for other people who are hurting
Mhm.
readers on the other side. And so I do want to talk about the kids book. We're getting there,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I will say with the book you're listening to, The Louder Song, for me, I didn't know anything at that time really about the historical practice or language of lament
Mm,
in the church and in scripture. And
yeah.
so as I began to learn that that's just actually a part of the human experience and Christian faith, and God allows us to cry out to him in lament on behalf of other people who are hurting, on behalf of injustice, and on behalf of our own pain, it was like, oh, this has been missing from my spiritual
Yes.
formation. And so part of why I write and why I podcast and I have a ministry is in order to help Christians have a less anemic theology of suffering, and in order to help Christians understand, like, it's it's okay to shake your fist at God. And we know this. I mean, more and
Mhm,
more people are talking about this, and I'm so grateful, but I still think the more we can
mhm.
say this is part of what it means to have an intimate relationship with God is
Yes.
you get to be as angry and sad and raw as you want to one day, and then sing your
Yeah.
praise songs the next day, and God welcomes it all. Like, that's part of
Yes,
intimacy.
yes.
So
It's
part of my
good.
work is just kind of my own healing, and then ideally for other people's healing. But I did so the kids book, Big Feelings Days, a book about hard things, heavy emotions,
Yeah.
and Jesus's love, that came about in a couple ways. One, I told you my best friend Jen was diagnosed with breast cancer. She's got 3 young sons.
Mm.
And I'm their auntie. And so I
Yeah.
am, that auntie heart is like, oh man, how are they going to process this?
Mm.
And then simultaneously a precious family at our church had a stillbirth.
Mm.
And they asked my husband Kevin and I to do the funeral. And after the funeral, precious mama called me and was like, look, there are resources out there for us as parents who've lost a baby. She had 3 other kids. I've got 3
Yeah.
other kids who've lost a sibling, and there's nothing for them.
Yeah.
And maybe there were a couple like sweet books about mom being in heaven or something
Yeah.
like that, but nothing about losing a child, a baby, nothing about where God is with kids, nothing about what
Mhm.
kids can do in their grief. And so it's just, I actually called my publisher very earnestly saying, I
Mm.
need a book. Do you have any recommendations? Help me find something. And I wasn't even thinking about writing a kid's book at all.
Mhm, mhm.
And they were like, we think you need to write it. And
Aw.
so I feel like the way God does things, it helped me because here I am grieving the loss of my friend, worried for her precious kiddos, thinking of this family at our church. And all of a sudden I got to, create this beautiful little resource for precious kids who are hurting, whether they're feeling angry or sad or just had a bad day.
Yes.
And it I got to show Jen the cover of the book, which is really a precious cover, while she was on hospice just before she died.
Aw.
And even that was
Oh my goodness.
just a gift from God. And her husband, his name is Justin, she died on the 21st of December. Every month on the 21st, he reads the book to the kids.
Oh my goodness.
So those
That
are,
is
it's like the worst and the most precious,
right.
all at once. And that's
Yes.
it. That's suffering, right?
That's it. Holding those two
Yeah.
together. And I have this beautiful
Oh,
book.
you have it?
Yes,
Sweet.
it's gorgeous. So I'm holding up her book, and it is gorgeous. And I used it a few weeks ago with my 12-year-old.
Really?
I did. And it's funny because when I saw that when it launched, I was like, I have to get the book because I know I'll need it, whether for recommending to someone or using it at home. And so for sure, because I have a big feelings kid.
Yep, we all have big feelings kid, don't we?
And it was just such a beautiful resource. And I was just able to sit down with him. And I just read it. And my 8-year-old, she was in the room as well. And so I just read it to them. And it was just so, so good. Meaning it just spoke to them. Like I saw it in their faces, in their eyes, that it spoke to them where they were. I'm telling you.
Such a gift for me. Thank you.
So I was like, oh my goodness. So yeah, I was like, yeah, I just wanted to tell you that because
it's very encouraging. I'm
definitely
so glad.
a gift from God.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes into this next question or this comment and question. I've heard it said that the most overlooked grievers are the kids, are the children. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't have like data on that, but wouldn't you say anecdotally, most of the resources that are out there are for adults, for grandparents, for parents who've lost adult kids. And that's great. Those resources need to be out there. But I do feel like there is just it's funny, even a couple years ago when my publisher and I were just on Amazon, grief kids for books.
Yeah.
Harry Potter popped up. You know what I mean? And I do think since that time there's a few more titles actually now out there. I'm so grateful, but they are under-resourced. And
yes, definitely.
Part of it is I don't think parents have been trained, adults have been trained with childlike language to know how to talk with kids about things that are heavy and hard and confusing. And don't you think too, there's a reluctance, now I'm getting philosophical, so I don't know, but there's a reluctance to want to enter into those hard conversations with kids because you don't want to bust their precious innocent bubble. But then when they lose a sibling or they lose a parent or mom and dad go through a divorce or grandma dies, like those are very real traumas for them, tragedies for them, big T or little t. And so I think to love them well and raise them up and form them, it's so helpful if friends, neighbors, families, members, aunts, uncles in the church can help give precious kids language at their level.
At their level. Yeah. Just when you were talking, it reminded me of how we're just trying to get things together for adults, really.
For real. Is that true? Just now. Right. That's so true.
So it makes sense that, we don't have as many resources for younger kids. And it reminds me because I did have only a few years ago, a niece, like my sister-in-law's daughter, my husband's sister. Child, passed away from cancer at 12. And so I feel like my kids were impacted because it's their cousin.
Yeah.
And so, so we've had to have conversations and so resources like this book is just amazing because it does speak at their level, the truth of the Word of God, and how I think it was so comforting to my son this past couple of weeks because it speaks to how Jesus is like us. He has big feelings too.
Yes.
And I think that making that, because that's what I do as an adult for my grief book, to say Jesus wept too.
Yes. Yes.
So it's just really I love your book so much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It's so very encouraging to me, Natasha. Thank you. So
how, and we're kind of in this conversation, but how has navigating your grief kind of looked over the years as a parent? Meaning, because it's hard for me, it's hard. You're grieving and you're parenting too. So
I feel like if you have good lessons on that, you can let me know because I'm figuring out.
Okay, yeah.
I will say, like, especially the early days of Jen dying. I mean, I just couldn't. What fresh grief is like. You really don't. You can't really compartmentalize it in the early days. And so, I mean, I just can remember saying to my kids, like, it's okay that I'm sitting here sobbing. It's okay that I'm still on the couch. At some point, I'll get up. Mommy's here. Mommy loves you. But like, right now I miss Auntie Jen and I'm just really, really sad. But then I do feel like, and this is actually something my best friend Jen taught me as she was even dealing with cancer. There are times you have to go, you know what, I need to take a break now and I need to get up and like return the library books and take my son to the orthodontist and do the work that's in front of me. Partly because it's a way to keep engaging in life and partly because that's just adulthood too. And it's not, I think in the past I would have said that's insincere or inauthentic, but I don't think it is. I actually think it's very mature to go, you know what? I need to pause from my grief. Landmines are going to hit. They're just going to, but in as much power as I have, I need to pause and like go take a shower and put on adult pants and tend to the things in front of me. And that doesn't mean not doing self-care. That doesn't mean being tender, but it's like, and then I'm going to go back to my grief at the right time. But I don't have great words for that, Natasha, except to say, I feel like I've needed my kids to see me do both. Like, mom can be responsible. Mom can still lead a church with dad. Mom can still, accomplish things, but mom also has moments where she's really, really sad because she misses your Auntie Jen and my disease is flaring up and I'm in pain. And we're gonna see both. And hopefully not this, hopefully when they're adults, they're okay. But, hopefully not this up and down roller coaster, but just the reality of life. Like you said before, like it's the both and I do think we can model that appropriately for our kids and let them see, okay, this is what someone who's hurting looks like as they're letting themselves grieve authentically, but choosing hope in Christ in the midst of it,
Yes. I love that so much because I think that is the most important thing as parents, because otherwise, for me, it took 2020 for me to kind of show my kids that I cry.
Wow.
Like that was the point of me. That was like my first time crying in front of them because I would literally either leave the room or, just not show them that I'm sad.
Yeah.
And so, and so just hearing you, just having that conversation, because those are the kind of conversations I have now. Well, I'm sad because, it's your Aunt Sharon's birthday today and I wish she was here, that sort of thing, because it's life. And I think it's important for us to, that's how we change the mindset of this next generation, around grief, is how we teach and train our kids. So that's powerful. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. It's really good.
So what are some practical ways children can navigate loss and big feelings?
So this is part of why I actually get really excited talking about Big Feelings Days, because there are really practical ways. And so one of the things is, I'm going to give you kind of two threads, and I do write about these in the book. But one is kids need some language that's kid appropriate. So you and I might be like, look, I am off today. Leave me alone. You know what I mean? I am in anguish today. Kids aren't necessarily going to say that. So to give kids, especially little ones, language like I feel like a stompy dinosaur today, I want to stomp around, or my head feels like there's bees buzzing around in it, or my body just feels like there's a car engine on. Like, to give kids that language, do you feel like you're sleepy like a turtle? Do you feel like you want to roar like a tiger? Like, especially for little ones, I think just to help them understand that grief does happen in your body, pain happens in your body, anger, sadness, all of it does. And even as adults, we're trying to figure that out.
Exactly.
But to help them understand, like, okay, when you feel these things in your body, like, what's going on there? That's big feelings. You're having some big feelings. And that it's accessible and tangible, like when we can
Yeah.
give kids that kind of language. And then again, because it's happening in their bodies, and this is really like adult work, but we're just saying it for
It's
kids,
true.
right?
Yeah.
Like for adults, we might do something like a breath prayer, or that, like, what do they call it? 4 square breathing, where you like breathe in twice, breathe out, on a longer count. With kids, you might go, hey, we're going to breathe in really big, and then we're going to blow out an imaginary birthday candle on a cake. We're teaching kids ways to express their feelings, especially to Jesus. Have them write a letter to Jesus, or draw a picture to Jesus, or even teach kids that they can yell and they can talk and they can sing to Jesus if they want to. And I think giving them some of those like tangible, that, make something with Play-Doh and squeeze the Play-Doh, like giving kids tangible handholds. These are some practical ways to help them begin to recognize what's happening in their emotions in their body, and then do something about it. And then teach them all of that doing is towards Jesus, because Jesus wants their big feelings and wants to be with them, and they're not alone, and he's there with them. I just think those are some really tender practical ways that our kids can know, like, they're not alone, and that they also can start to make sense of all of these things that are happening inside of them.
Gosh, this is so huge. Like, I hope everyone who is listening is like really taking note of all this, because it goes back to kind of what we were saying before. It's like, just imagine if everyone in the world who has kids has this book. And then those kids become adults who recognize their big feelings, and they use tangible, practical things to help them manage their big feelings, and to point all these things back to Jesus. Oh my gosh. You know what I mean?
It'd be healthy adults, right?
Yes.
And like, I just think we know this as adults, the things we store in our body, we store in our emotions, they leak out. I mean,
leak out.
And so we can let them leak out in really unhealthy, stinky, yucky, hurtful, ugly ways, or in really dignifying, honoring of self and neighbor ways that points us to Jesus. And I think that's like, yes, of course, for me, I want every family to get a copy of Big Feelings Days, but I think you're right.
Yeah,
like,
it's true though.
To be formed into healthy adults who are processing pain and grief and suffering well, I'd also just think not only would it breed freedom and health, but just compassion and dignity for one another, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, yeah, so huge. So I just love this so much. But let us know, because you're hosting different community events that I've been seeing, and I think it is amazing, just serving the way that you do. So just please let the listeners know of any upcoming things, and then even further, I'll have it in the show notes, but just tell us about a few upcoming things that you have going on, and how
you're very encouraging, by the way, Natasha.
Well,
thank you.
Yay.
Thank you. I really appreciate you. I really do. So I host a monthly gathering online. It's free. It's on Zoom, called the Louder Song Community. It references my book, The Louder Song, which is about hope and lament. It's simply an hour, 7:30 p.m. Central Time to 8:30 p.m. Central Time, one Wednesday night a month. And it's just a safe space for grievers and those walking with the hurting to hear from it was almost like a live podcast, to hear from somebody who's walked through grief. I usually share some scripture, pray for the people who are there, and really just a way to kind of say you're seen and you're known. And there's not much of an agenda beyond that. I just know what it is to hurt, and know what it is to have these questions of God. And so it's a space to address that. And you can, my next one's coming up on April 24th. You can, if you follow me on Instagram at AubSamp, or my Substack, aubreysampson.substack.com, I'll typically post and start sharing evites, event links, all that kind of stuff. You'll see the links in my Instagram page as well, but it's free. You can register for it. If you miss it, subscribers to my Substack get the copy of the recorded event, but they're really, really meaningful. I have to have you on one soon, by the way.
I'm like, I need to come to these monthly. What's my deal? But I think for some reason I just saw like the one that is coming up, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. So yeah,
we'll have you for sure. And then I have a podcast called Nothing is Wasted, and I co-host that with a pastor in Indiana who went through some terrible suffering as well. Mm-hmm. And we share weekly stories every Thursday. You can find that wherever it is you download and stream your podcast. It's kind of what you do, just hurting people. Where's the hope in it? Yeah. What's the story? How did God show up? In order to try to, the enemy tries to take your story when you're walking through suffering. And so how can we take back our stories by, just letting people share how God has met them in their pain and suffering.
Oh, so beautiful. I'm so excited. So you guys who are listening, please connect with Aubrey, because this is just amazing. Just so many resources, beautiful resources that they can tap into. So before we go, I want you, if you could just leave a few words of hope for those who are listening today.
I would love to do that. I would thank you for that. If we can go back to, I'm trying to decide if I should go big feeling. You know what I'm going to do? Here's what I'm going to do.
Oh, yay. That's so sweet.
Can I just read a little moment from Big Feelings Days? This will be the hope. There's a page where I'm sure people aren't necessarily watching, they're listening, but there's a page where Jesus is on a front porch swing, and there's a big gust of wind blowing, and he's holding this little boy in a dinosaur costume in his arms. And it says, if your big feelings feel too loud, Jesus can stop that blustering gust of wind just by saying, stop, wind, that's enough now. Please be quiet. The wind listens to Jesus. When you have big feelings, Jesus is right next to you. He takes good care of you and your big feelings too. That's how much he loves you. And then I'm going to skip ahead to the end because I love this part. And one day, even though it might seem like a very long way away, Jesus will turn all of your bad, sad, make you mad, big feelings days into new days. Never have to cry days, never get hurt days, never get mad days, never have to say goodbye days. Jesus will do that for you and for the whole world too. That's how much Jesus loves you and your big feelings too. And that's a reference to Revelation 21, where it says that one day God will wipe away every tear from every eye. Death will be gone for good. Tears gone, crying gone, pain gone, because Jesus will make all things new.
Yes. So beautiful and so perfect for just giving hope.
Yeah.
To big kids and little kids.
That's right.
That's right. I love it so much. So again, where can listeners connect and pick up a copy of your book and all your resources?
Yeah, thanks for that. Mostly I'm on Instagram at AubSamp, AubSamp. I have a website, aubreysampson.com. Have resources in both places. And then my books are sold wherever it is. If you've heard of Amazon, a little boutique bookstore, my books are there, audiobooks and regular, but they're sold wherever you buy your books. So I would love connecting with listeners and readers, and especially people are hurting. So send me messages. I will respond to you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Aubrey, for this time, just sitting with me. It has been so fun. We're talking about grief, but it was still fun, right?
It was fun.
And just it's just been a joy to chat with you. So thanks for sitting with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I seriously love what you do. I love your voice, and I'm so grateful for getting to be here today.
That brings me to the end of this episode. Thanks again for joining me, and thanks for listening to Can You Just Sit With Me? If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, and be sure to come back for my next episode of Can You Just Sit With Me? Until then, this is Natasha Smith, helping you to find hope in grief, hope in the hard place, and hope in the challenging times of life. Be sure to connect with me across social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at I'm Natasha Smith.